Good evening, everybody. It's now 7:15, so welcome to our planning committee meeting this evening. Welcome to members of the committee and officers, members of the public, and to anybody watching on our YouTube channel. So we'll move on to the agenda. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. We have one apology this evening from Councillor Monday, who hasn't got a substitute. We're hoping that Councillor Beavis will turn up shortly.
Can I give her apologies on her behalf? She emailed today, so she can't make it tonight.
Okay, thank you.
And one of our subs, Councillor Wright, couldn't take part in two of the applications because he lives next door to the site, so he can't sub.
Okay, so Councillor Beavis is also given her apologies. And yes, thank you, Councillor Abbott. I understand why it's not been possible to appoint a substitute. Item 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest or other registrable interest relating to items on the agenda, having regard to the Code of Conduct for members? Councillor Abbott.
I don't have an interest, Madam Chairman, but in the interest of transparency, I thought I'd just say I have taken advice about the two Rivenhall applications. Previously, I did oppose the principle, and I didn't take part in the REM application. However, that's sometime in the past. The site's now being built out. I've come to this single change on one aspect with an open mind. And having taken advice, I don't believe I am predetermined, which would be the only reason why I couldn't take part. I don't have any other interest, so I just thought I'd make that clear.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott, for explaining that to us. Next item on the agenda is item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. I have before me the minutes of the meeting on the 12th of August. Do you wish me to approve those? Correct record. The minutes of the meeting. Thank you. So Councillor Ritchie moving that, seconded Councillor Holland. All those in favour of me sign the minutes. Thank you very much, members. Right, so item 4 on the agenda is public question time. We don't have any registered speakers under this item, so we'll move now on to item 5 on the agenda, which is planning applications. The first application we're going to consider this evening is application number 25/02016 NMA. It's land north east of Rectory Lane, Rivenhall. And we don't have any speakers on this item, I think. No, that's for the. We have to speak for the second item. So we will move straight on to Neil, who's going to give a presentation on this one. Thank you.
Good evening, members. So the first application this evening is an application for a non-material amendment. The full description is in the papers. It's probably well, obviously this relates to Phase 4, land northeast of Rectory Lane, which is in Rivenhall, so to the northeast of Witham. The non-material amendment is a request to change the vehicular access and movement parameter plan. So when the outline permission was granted on appeal for this site, it included a number of parameter plans, one of which was a vehicular access and movement plan, parameter plan. As I will explain, or as is explained in the report and through the presentation, the applicant has requested an amendment to that plan. So the site is, as I said, to the northeast of Witham. So our site is this area at the top here. So this is known as Phase 4. So you can see more clearly here with the red line. but just in terms of the context, this is phase 1 and phase 2 of the Rivenhall Oaks development by Bellway. So these phases have been built out. Phase 3 is a development which was called the Bluebells, again by Bellway off the Rickstones Road. This is Rectory Lane, just running up the side of the site here. So we're concerned with this site and particularly this end of the site, which I shall explain. So, with the outline application, a single parameter plan was approved for the vehicular access and movement. Now, as I said, the element we're concerned with this amendment is just at this northern end here. So, as you can see, we've got an area of open space. So this is where our sports pitches will be provided. And what was shown on the approved parameter plan was a section of bus-only or restricted highway, which is intended primarily for use by buses, and a short length of spine road. So this would form a connection through. So we've got the development parcels here, so the grey area is where the housing is going. This is the spine road, which was going to run through the centre of the development. I mean, you can see the idea with this parameter plan was at this end of the site, the normal sort of highway restrictions would end. A bus only or bus and taxi and motorcycle restriction would apply for this dotted red line running between the sports pitches, a section of spine road at the end, and there'd be a vehicular connection through to Rickstones Road. And the reason that the parameter plan was drawn up in this way was that the preferred option of the County Council as the Highway Authority and as planning officers was that that connection be made because we felt or were advised that this would provide better opportunities for a bus service in the future. If a bus could enter and leave off Rickstones Road and come through the development, that would be more attractive to bus operators and provide a better range of options for the County Council when they came to commission a service in the future. Whilst that was the preferred option and the option which was shown on the parameter plan, it was never intended that would be the only option. So as was made clear in the design code, which the Council approved at Planning Committee, and in the Section 106 agreement, which was agreed with the Outline Permission, there was a provision made which was that if the bus-only section could not be provided for some reason, there was a fallback position whereby a pedestrian cycle connection could be provided in its place from here through to Rickstones Road. Whilst that was always envisaged at outline stage, the parameter plan only captured the one option, which is the one you can see here. So this is the layout which we've already, which the council have already approved. So this is the reserved matters, which was known as the bus gate application. So it's just zoomed in at the northern end, so you can see this is where the residential development ends, and then you've got the restriction here to provide the bus only or the restricted bus lane through here, coming up to Rickstones Road. So this reserved matters layout arrangement already has approval. That's been through committee previously. What happened was the next item on the committee tonight was another reserved matters application which the developer made at the same time, which has a slightly different arrangement without the bus gate. That's just a drawing showing the connection onto Rickstones Road, so that's been approved as well through the reserved matters previously. But what we're looking at with the non-material amendment is the parameter plan, which is what we're looking at here. So this is the approved drawing here, but what the applicant is asking us to do is approve an amendment to that plan which has this inset, and the inset shows the change, or the fallback option, which shows the bus loop. So you can see the spine road continues to here, but then rather than continuing all the way between the sports pitches to Rickstones Road, it loops around and would allow buses to enter and leave that loop in forward gear and then come out to the development. And then a pedestrian cycle connection is shown running through here to the site, to Rickstones Road. So this is the amended access parameter plan that we're asking members to approve. So this is the subject of the non-material amendment. So just zooming in on that a bit closer, so you can see on the left-hand side we've got the approved parameter plan, and then on the right-hand side we've got the inset blown up, which shows the revised arrangement. So there is a correction to be made, and apologies for this. I've incorrectly quoted the reference or drawing number in the committee report. So we quoted in the committee report revision G, but as you can see, it should have been revision J. So that's noted in the committee report in a few places, but just so we're clear, it's revision J, which I've just shown, which we're asking members to approve. So in summary, we've got an outline planning permission which required that the reserve matters, when they're submitted, comply with 6 approved parameter plans. The non-material amendment we're asking members to approve tonight is to amend one of the 6 plans, and it's just the one with reference to that northern end of the site, and it's the option to have a bus loop rather than the bus gate and the spine road which was shown originally. So when considering the outline planning application as a whole, the change to the vehicular access parameters is not considered to be material. So the main all-vehicle access will continue to be from Evans Way, so from the phase 1, phase 2 development earlier, which is that's the main entrance. So we don't believe the changes at the northern end of the site are material to the outline permission. The change to the parameter plan that we're asking for approval for is consistent with the 106 agreement, which we have from the outline permission, and it's also consistent with the approved site-wide design code. So we see no policy reason to object to the proposed change, and like I say, it was something that was envisaged, it just wasn't captured in the original plan. So we're recommending that the request for a non-material amendment is approved, subject to the conditions set out in Appendix 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil, for explaining that so clearly for us. Members, Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I remember when the original plans were submitted, this was discussed as an option. So really it's capturing something which has been around for many years as a possible. I'll say much more on the second application rather than this one, but as a technical change, I'm very happy to support this.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, if I recall correctly, this had there was a fair bit of discussion around this option as well. So I think this is one of the preferred options, given that the vehicular route on the original was cutting through 2 football pitches, and there was discussion around player safety or those that were using the 2 parks that could come into conflict with vehicles moving up and down that route, even though it would be restricted to buses, taxis, and motorcycles. So I think to have this option included now, I think, is a very wise step forward. And just if quickly, Neil, you could just confirm, is this the option that they will choose, or is it just to give them the option of one or the other nearer the time?
I think it's primarily to give the option. I think Mr Spencer is going to speak just before who's the planning agent, who's going to speak just before the reserve matters. We'll probably say a little bit more just to clarify Beltway's position, but essentially it's to provide the option at the moment.
Thank you. In which case I think it's more than sensible for us as a committee to give them that option and hope that the sense prevails at the right time and they introduce the right one for this development. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, would anybody like to move officer's recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Seconded. Councillor Holland. So that has been moved and seconded with the make this a non-material amendment to the parameter plan. All those in favour of granting that? Thank you, members. That application is approved. So we'll now move on to item 5B on the agenda, which relates to the same site. This is application number 24/00697 REM. Again, land northeast of Rectory Lane, Rivenhall. And we do have a speaker on this, who is Mr. Olivier Spencer, who's the agent for the applicant. Thanks, Mr. Spencer.
Good evening, councillors. I'm Olivier Spencer, the agent representing Belway Homes in relation to North East Switham Phase 4. As you may recall, reserve matters consent was granted in August last year for development on this site. That consent included 225 new homes, 69 of which will be affordable homes, a sustainable drainage system, and a variety of public open space, including sports pitches and a pavilion, a linear park with an equipped play area for older children and young people, woodland and an extension to the allotments to the south. The consent also included a new access from Rickstones Road and a bus gate section of Spine Road leading between the new sports pitches. A second reserve matters application was submitted and processed at the same time for a very similar development, the key difference being the inclusion of a bus turning loop near the sports pavilion and a pedestrian and cycle only connection to Rickstones Road, rather than the new access from Rickstones Road and section of Spine Road. Provision for the turning loop option was set out in the signed Section 106 agreement and the approved site-wide design code, in the event that a traffic regulation order for the bus gate scheme had not been made prior to the commencement of development. As the traffic regulation order has not been secured so far, and the development has already commenced, Bellway is investigating whether or not to move forward with the turning loop scheme. The approval of the reserve matters application currently before you is necessary for the turning loop scheme to become a deliverable option. Bellway is also mindful that the new access from Rickstones Road and Busgate section of Spine Road were perhaps the most contentious part of the first reserve matters application when it was considered by this committee last year. In this regard, the turning loop option should enhance the space between the sports pitches and improve the usability of this open space. As set out in the committee report and following approval of the non-material amendment, the turning loop scheme is consistent with the parameter plans approved at the outline stage. It is also notable that the local highway authority, Essex County Council, have no objections or concerns with the bus turning loop and the pedestrian and cycle only connection to Rickstones Road. With this in mind, I respectfully request that members follow officer's recommendation and grant reserve matters consent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Spencer. And again, that sets up that very clearly. So now proceed to Neil, who's going to give us a presentation on this application.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. So the description of developments on the screen, but just to highlight the element that's changing is just down here. So where previously we had the bus gate, the change here is to have a cycle and pedestrian connection to Rickstones Road. So I've introduced the site and the context already, and we've just had the approval for the parameter plan on the right. So when we were obviously writing the report, we were writing the report and the recommendation on the basis that that would be approved. So it's good to know that that's been approved and that the reserve matters application that we're considering now, we can confirm, or officers can confirm, that this is in accordance with the parameter plans, all the approved parameter plans. So the presentation that I'm going to go through is largely the same as the one that I gave previously when we looked at the bus gate application. Obviously, there's some slight changes around the bus gate and the bus loop. Just to explain, it is important that we, or as officers, we think it's important that we do present the whole scheme. So whilst members may have a little bit of deja vu in places as they recall the presentation previously, and I'll try not to dwell on anything too long, we do need to make sure that we cover the whole thing, because this is a new permission in its own right. And also we do have some members who didn't participate in the previous discussion, so we need to make sure everybody is fully aware of the situation. So just to confirm, though, the site layout is here. The housing mix, which is just shown, which I'm not expecting anybody to read, but the housing mix up here is exactly the same. That's completely unchanged. The layout, the open space, the housing, the roads, everything is unchanged until you get up to this section up here at the northern end of the site. And the only change, as I've said previously, is just this stretch here. So from the end of the Spine Road here, you can see we've got the bus loop here, which is just by or just next to the pavilion and the car park, and the path that runs through to Rickstones Road. So these are the only changes. Obviously there is, sorry, I should have said there is a slight change, a consequential change in terms of the access to the car park, because that's coming off the loop, whereas previously it was just coming off the road. But other than that, the rest of the scheme is as before. Just to remind everybody as well, the cut-out section here, rather these 5 plots here, these are the custom-build or self-build plots. So the reserve matters that we've got is to deal with the rest of the site, the other 220 dwellings. those 5 dwellings, which are self-build or custom build, will be dealt with separately. So zooming into the northern end of the site, just to show that in a little bit more detail, you can see the turning loop here is shown to have a bus lay-by or bus stop area just here, where the bus could stop, and then the idea is that the bus can continue in forward gear, round, and then back out and come down the spine road. So that would improve, so that's another way of improving access for a bus service coming in. It wouldn't be attractive for a bus service to come into the development if there wasn't somewhere for it to turn round in forward gear, because a bus isn't going to want to try and do a 3-point turn or equivalent within a housing estate for all sorts of reasons. So this is intended to provide operational capacity for a bus service to operate through the site in the future. And then rather than having the road coming through to Rickstones Road before, there's now a pedestrian cycle path shown coming through to Rickstones Road, providing an additional connection point through there. So the reserved matters previously that we've seen had a number of plans which just sort of show what was being proposed. So this is a building heights plan, so you can see we've got predominantly 2-storey, which is the mid-blue colour across the development. You've got a few, I should say, 2.5-storey buildings through the centre spine road here, which sort of help with legibility and establishing hierarchy. And there's single-storey buildings, including the sports pavilion up here, some garages, and a small number of bungalows as well. The affordable housing provision is 30% across the development, and you can see a mix of affordable rent and shared ownership houses in a number of clusters through the development, sort of 4 loose clusters overall. And there's a wide range of house types and elevational treatments. So I'm sure all members will remember previously when we've explained about the character areas, which were developed at some pains by the developer to try and pick out the best elements of Witham and try and draw some of those features through into the house types here. So there's a few house types here which are just shown from some of the different character areas just to give a flavour of some of the houses. So this is one of the end terraced houses. This is one of the internal spaces, so this is within more towards the centre of the site, but you can see different arrangement of materials, different details on the property, and there was a number of street scenes as well. So this is just trying to show one of the internal spaces, which is the sort of beigey colour here, so you can see through the centre pockets of the development. This is one of the bungalow house types. And we've got house types with weatherboarding, so different materials again. This is one of the countryside edges. So you can see here, sort of facing towards this, towards the golf course around this side, for example, and along here. So you can just see the range of materials. So we've got quite a lot of brick, some renders as well to break up the street scene. This is the one of the house types called the Thespian. So this is on the avenue. So this is on the spine road running through the site. So slightly more formal sort of architecture, stronger detailing. Another one of the house types. This is the 2.5-storey dwelling that I pointed out in the building heights plan. And then this is just showing how that hangs together. This is a section of the spine road running through the centre of the site. So you can see the 2.5-storey houses there, predominantly 2-storey. And another one of the 2-bed house types. And then this is the Parkland, so this is a different character area. So this is looking down the bottom of the site, looking towards Rectory Lane, which just runs along the outside of the site here. And then this is moving up towards the recreation ground, so this is some of the affordable housing towards the northern end of the site. And again, that's just a street scene, so this is up here, looking at the end of the site, looking down from the pitches. So some photographs just to show the context of the site before development commenced. So this is Rectory Lane, or a couple of photos of it anyway, which is a protected lane. So you can see quite narrow, some limited parking places, previously provided access to a couple of dwellings, although there was an appeal decision which has allowed some further dwellings to be developed down there. There's pedestrian connectivity from the Phase 4 site to Rectory Lane, but no vehicular access. Previously, the majority of the site was in agricultural use, so this is a slightly older photograph before development commenced, but just shows the context. And this is showing the northern site boundary. So these are the houses on Rickstones Road, or some of them I should say, which back onto the site. So this area here would be part of the sports pitches as proposed. A detailed landscaping scheme was provided as part of the application. So you can see key features here. We've got some water bodies down here. So this is part of the SUDS scheme across the bottom here. We've got a existing tree belt running through the middle of the site. So that's been having some trees removed to provide part of the play area, which you can see there, and obviously the access coming through. And then we've got sports provision within this development. So we've got shown illustratively here, there's sufficient space for 2 pitches. Obviously it would depend on the size that they're marked out, but you can see we've got provision there. A developer will also provide a pavilion building or a changing room building here, which they've designed to look, have the appearance of a more traditional sort of outbuilding with black boarding and a tile roof. So less municipal perhaps than some pavilion buildings, but we think that works quite successfully in the context. This is the existing entrance in from Rickstones Road. So there's a commercial premises just at the northern end of the site, just off to the side here. So this is the existing entrance. So there is, as you can see, not great visibility at the moment, and there's a hedge growing just down here, which I thought I had a photo here. So you can see restricted visibility in this direction at the moment. The residents and we had representation certainly when the application was in originally about the safety of a potential junction here, and particularly with buses turning in and out of the junction. That obviously isn't being proposed with this application, but there would be a pedestrian cycle connection at this point. I know, looking back at the representations that we received, there was certainly some concerns around even pedestrian and cycle connectivity at this point. There are improvements to be made as part of the application to improve visibility, and the Highway Authority are satisfied that the visibility that can be achieved is appropriate for the intended use. So on the basis of the Highway Authority's advice, we have no reason to object to the proposed pedestrian cycle connection at this point. There is some tree removal. So at the northern end of the site, you can see areas here shown where trees are to be removed, and further down here, so you can see we've got the area here where we've got the play area being provided, the access road coming through, so losses there, and further around the edge of the site. So I mean, going back to the outline application, there was concern expressed around the extent of tree removal on the site, but when the inspector considered the outline application appeal, they didn't consider that the loss of trees weighed heavily against the development. And obviously, whilst there are trees to be removed, there is significant tree planting proposed as part of the new development. There was an issue that we discussed at the previous planning committee about the Ryder house type, which was one of the houses which was proposed at the development, which is shown to be a 2-bedroom dwelling with a study. So there was some concern from officers about 2-bedroom properties with a study The reason that we ask for two-bedroom properties is to provide a mix of dwellings to meet all different levels of housing need, and we were concerned that the provision of a study may take this type of property away from the market it's intended to provide for. However, the Ryder House type formed a relatively small number of dwellings within the mix overall. There was a strong provision of two-bed houses without a study, and when members discussed this previously, they were content with the mix that was proposed on this site, given this particular configuration of the dwelling and the numbers that were involved. So in summary, this is the second application of almost identical applications, the first one having been approved previously in August 2024. That included the vehicular access from Rickstones Road with restrictions for bus, motorcycle and taxi use. This application proposes a turning loop instead of that bus gate and the provision of the 3.5 metre wide pedestrian cycle connection instead. As I've said previously, having granted or approved the non-material amendment application earlier, this reserve matters application does comply with all of the parameter plans and the site-wide design code which was approved previously. So the principle of development is already firmly established by the outline planning permission and the previous grant of reserve matters. We have had a number of applications to discharge conditions previously. So since we granted the reserve matters previously, we didn't want the applicant to have to go through and discharge those conditions again. So what we've done is we've added those approved details to the draft decision, or the approved plans, I should say, so that those conditions have been changed to compliance conditions where they needed to be approved details before. So that's why the list is slightly different, but otherwise the conditions and the approved plans are largely as before. Obviously all the plans now show, on this plan, sorry, this scheme, show the bus loop rather than the bus gate. But in principle, the appearance, landscape, layout, scale of development is all largely as before, save for the changes at the northern end of the site. So officer's recommendation is that this reserve matters application is approved. As we've heard from the planning agent, the intention is to give the developer this other option going forward, so that they can either implement the already approved bus gate option or the bus loop option if that is approved tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil. Members. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a little bit of context and my usual comment I make about the Rivenhall-Witham boundary. It says at paragraph 5.2, in fact it said it at both the applications in the same paragraph number, about Bluebells being within the Witham development boundary. That's true, but Bluebells phase 3 is entirely within Rivenhall parish. And we have this dance constantly, but just to give members a bit of context, if you were to wind the clock back only about a decade and then come to now, approximately 650 houses have been built on land or about to be with this site that either was Rivenhall then or still is now. So it's a huge amount of development in Witham coming this way, and another 150 on the boundary, so 800 in all. So these developments are obviously having a big effect. But that said, this has got consent, and this is about the specific change. Rectory Lane was mentioned. The officer said about no access. In fact, we did have issues with development-related contractors using Rectory Lane, which Neil was involved with actually helping us to deal with, which caused upset. I mean, we've spent years trying to protect Rectory Lane. It has every characteristic and designation you can imagine. Protected lane, quiet lane, ancient lane, part of the John Ray Walk. You know, short of naming it after Donald Trump, I don't know what we do to protect it, you know. Perhaps that's the next move. Trump Lane, yeah. So it's very important to us, and we hope that this development, although it's visible from the lane, won't have a long-term impact on it. So the business of these options is very curious, because right from the start, I think if the turning loop had come forward, it would have avoided a lot of the objections that have taken place. And what I take away tonight, both from what the developer's agent said and from what it says in the reports, and I'd suggest to officers, is this is now the preferred option. Because if you look at what it says, the developer has said that they're fine with this and they want to get on. Sports England said this is safer because you don't have buses and taxis going and motorbikes going through the middle of sports pitches, which was a rather strange configuration from the first instance. The local residents are much happier with it because they're not going to have large vehicles trying to turn in quite a sharp turn through very close to their houses off a narrow part of Rectory Lane. And I think those of us who are keen on sustainable transport links, such as myself, are very pleased because instead of that road we'll now have a cycle path. And that cycle path will actually link directly all the way through almost to Witham Railway Station on almost a completely safe route. So it's a major piece of connectivity. So for me, this ticks an awful lot of boxes to say we should definitely support this. And can I gently suggest to officers they change their position and this is their preferred option rather than the other one. I think in terms of that area, the officer made the point about pavilion design. I totally agree with that. I think it does pick up a lot of local steers. There are a number of dark weatherboarded barns in that area, including the work units which it runs past and some private houses. So that's really good. I've never really understood the County Council's position that this is going to improve the bus service if they had come off Rickstones Road. The bus service is twice an hour, and this is going to serve it anyway. I never quite, I mean, I suppose it more directly goes into the estate one way, then it's still got to go through the estate, come out the other end at Forest Road. So not entirely sure how it would improve the bus service. It's still, as far as I'm aware, going to be every half hour. So I'm very pleased with this, and I think a lot of local residents will be very pleased with it, and we would, I think, as en masse say, please do this option. The only question I've got for us is actually Neil's presentation was a bit out of date. All those trees have been cut down on Rickstones Road. All the trees alongside the road near the entrance, and all the trees that were in the way of what would have been the bus gate inside the yard have all been cut down in summer, causing untold damage to wildlife. And I'm sure they did their statutory duty of looking for birds' nests, and if they didn't, they should have done. But what an awful, and we've had this before, what a terrible time of year to cut down trees. So my question is now, can we put a condition or informative on, because the trees have been cut down at ground level, and a lot of them may regrow as a hedge, allowing for the necessary sight line. So as if you imagine you're on what would have been the bus gate juxtaposition with Rectory Lane, with Rickstones Road, and you're looking right and you're looking left. On the left-hand side, can we have something to say those trees should be allowed to regrow, but as a hedge, whilst we maintain the sight line? Because I believe that would be, I've stood there and I believe that would be possible, rather than grub the whole lot out, which I think would be a further loss. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Neil, can you answer that?
If members want to continue, I'm just going to try and check the conditions
Okay.
rather than answer off the hoof. So if that's okay, Councillor Abbott, if that's okay, Chair.
That we'll do it that way. Yeah. Members, anybody else like to comment on this application? Councillor Ritchie?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I believe what's been set out by the Board Member, Councillor Abbott, is actually some really sensible comments there, especially given his earlier clarification on not having a predetermined biased interest in this application. I think what he's commented on is actually really sensible. I think this has to be the option going forward. The amount of contention and the amount of discussion that this generated from the outset, you would have thought it would have been easier just to have discussed the bus loop as the single and only option, rather than us to have to come back and change the application. Completely understand why Neil's had to run through the application in the detail that he's had to, for probity, in case there's anyone else watching on the YouTube channel this evening, or anyone who wasn't here on the original debate. But I think from a safety perspective and from a service perspective to residents who might be moving into the estate, I think it's a really, really good option and one that should be the preferred option. I'm a bit confused as to why the traffic regulation order hadn't been either granted or requested. I don't know if that was part of the reason why we're having to come back today to discuss this second option. But I think what this does show is that I think with some careful and considered planning and taking into account members' comments at forum stage and during the submission of the original application, that actually I think sense has really prevailed on this occasion, and I've been more than happy to support officers' recommendations in approving this request this evening. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Bowes-Flint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I agree with everything that's previously been said, but I'd like us to be as strong as we can on this being the only option to go forward with, even if it's on personal safety. Because, God forbid, if anything happened, and we had this discussion before of how bizarre that was going through, and we know how taxi drivers drive when they're in a hurry. They're not really aware of what's going on around them, and somebody just chasing a ball, which you do when you're playing football and that, I just hate to think. So I think even if it's just on personal safety grounds, we should just say that this is the option. Thank you.
And I would add to that the motorcyclists that people never seem to see at junctions. So, Neil, I think is going to be able to come back to your points, Councillor Abbott.
Thank you. Having looked back, so on the outline planning permission, there was a requirement around a landscaping scheme as one of the reserved matters. So the landscaping scheme's been submitted. So we're being asked to approve that tonight, and we'll need to approve a landscaping scheme because that's one of the reserved matters. So we can't amend the scheme that's in. What I think we could do is add a condition to the reserved matters to say, to ask that the applicant considers whether there is the opportunity, or provide evidence to see whether there's the opportunity for trees which have been cut down, which would be outside of the required visibility display, and to be allowed to regrow as the area is no longer required to be kept clear because of the road. So I think we could potentially put a condition on to cover that, but I think that's the best we could do, because like I say, otherwise we'd end up trying to approve reserved matters but without approving the landscaping scheme, which doesn't show that at the moment. So I think that hopefully would allow us to address the point Councillor Abbott raised. If I can just come back on the point that Councillor Ritchie was raising about the traffic regulation order. As I understand it, the process has been that where Bellway have been speaking to the Highway Authority about the Highway Works agreement to actually build the road and the traffic regulation order. Part of getting the traffic regulation order is to have details of a bus service, and I think part of the problem has been getting agreement from another department as to what the bus service would be. Bearing in mind, I have to say, I raised my eyebrows a little bit as well when I heard it, but I think part of the problem is we're looking at potentially a bus service which might be provided in maybe a couple of years' time, because they're clearly not going to commission a bus service until the route is there. So I think that has complicated things a little bit more perhaps than Highways colleagues considered at the time, but I think that's part of the problem. But I think I've certainly heard what Councillor Abbott and you've said, Councillor Ritchie, and Councillor Bowes-Flint as well, and I'm sure that the agents heard that this evening. So I think by approving this, we give the developer the option, but equally I think the developer will hear quite clearly what the committee's preference, and from what Councillor Abbott was saying, was the local community's preference is as well. And we can pick up a conversation around that, and I would imagine I'll be able to report back informally to members once the developer's made a decision, just so you're aware of what happens. But hopefully that helps with Councillor Abbott's point about the trees and Councillor Ritchie's point about the traffic regulation order.
Yes, thank you, Neil. I think, yes, the whole committee, I think with lots of nods going on, are very much prefer the bus loop option. Could I just ask a quick question myself about the bus loop itself? Will that be just one-way traffic around the bus loop?
Yeah, I think that's the intention. So there's a bus stop marked out to the side as you come in, so the bus can stop there, but then it can just go round. But yes, it's just wide enough to allow the bus to go round in forward gear and then and exit out the other way.
And also the traffic going into the car park
That's
would
right,
do the same
yeah.
thing. Okay, thank you very much. And other members got any further questions or points they'd like to make? In that case, I think that's a no. Would anybody therefore like to move officer's recommendation? Councillor Abbott's going to move officer's recommendation.
I'll move it with the additional condition, and just to add a couple of sentences to that. I've had a look at the trees that have been cut down. I think some of them may regrow. They are decades old. Some of the trunks are a couple of foot across. And as per the letter I had in the paper, it's an increasing struggle to get young trees to grow, unless you spend a lot of time watering them and mulching them because of climate change. I mean, if you go around the local development sites, there are many dead or dying young trees. So keeping trees like this where we can, where they're old growth and they've got established roots, is, if we can do it, I think, obviously we need to plant new ones, but it's the first option we should be looking at. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, I agree with that if we can. Councillor Ritchie, are you seconding? Lovely, thank you very much. So all those in favour of granting this application with the additional commission? That is unanimous. Thank you very much, members. That application has been granted. So we'll now move on to our final application this evening. This is item 5C on your agenda, page 70, and this is application number 25/00437 REM. This is at Small Acres in Hatfield Peveril. And we do have a speaker this evening, who is Mr. Firth, who is an agent for the applicant. Thanks, Mr. Firth.
Thank you and good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is James Firth, partner at Ceres Property, representing our client Chigwell Developments, who have recently purchased the land at Small Acres and are the applicant for the application tonight. The application relates to a reserve matters submission following the issuing of outline planning permission in March 2023. Access arrangements were approved as part of the outline application, and therefore these are fixed. Various obligations were also secured as part of the outline application, including a financial contribution towards healthcare, play area and outdoor sport contribution, and allotments contribution. Other elements of the scheme are, of course, to be considered through this reserve matters application. The proposal incorporates 17 dwellings, including 6 affordable units and a mix of bungalows and houses. We've worked closely with the council officers to bring forward the development, undertaking a number of pre-application meetings with the case officer, urban design officer and housing enabling officer to develop what we believe is a high quality scheme. The applicant has incorporated those changes and updates as requested by the council. The proposal has been designed to accord with the Braintree Local Plan, the Hatfield Peveril Neighbourhood Plan and Essex Design Guide, and achieves a high quality, well considered and sensitively designed scheme. Approving this application will of course ensure the timely delivery of 17 new dwellings within a sustainable location on a site where the principle of development has previously been established. The homes are deliverable in the short term, helping to meet housing supply targets while supporting sustainable growth for the local area. We therefore respectfully request that you approve the application tonight in line with your officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Firth. So we'll now move on to the presentation, which is going to be from by Mel.
Good evening, members. So the application that we are looking at this evening is for the approval of reserve matters at a site called Small Acres, Malden Road, Hatfield Peveril. As set out on the screen, the reserve matters are for the landscaping, scale, design and appearance. So this is the site location plan. The site is accessed off of Malden Road, off of a road called Old School Court, which partially shares a public right-of-way that runs along it and then diverts to the southeastern side of the Small Acres site. To the north is a previous development, fairly new, that's been finished and built out. And then to the south is a current planning application that we've got in for an outline planning permission. I have got a later slide that shows that in more context. This is an aerial photograph of the site. So you can just see here the roofs of the new houses to the north. This is the application site. Small Acres itself is a chalet bungalow, which is located here where my cursor is. Oh, sorry about that. And the vehicular access runs along here off of Malden Road. This vehicular access does serve a number of properties in this location here. So this was the slide I was referring to. So the application site is in the centre, which is pink. To the north is the yellow, which is the site known off of Glen Eagles Way. That has been built out. And then to the southeast of the application site is a site that's come forward from Gladman and is currently being considered by officers and is an outline application for up to 103 dwellings. The next slide shows some photographs. So these two here are pictures of the access. So this top one here is a photo taken from Malden Road, looking up Old School Court. So if members are aware and know the site, then this is the start of the almshouses that run along Malden Road. And then you've got properties that are served off of this private road. And this also serves as a public right-of-way as well, number 40, Hatfield-Pedville 40 footpath. This bottom photograph here is taken from Small Acres, looking back down towards Malden Road. And at this point here, the footpath no longer runs on the road and then runs to the edge of the site to the southeast and then continues off into the countryside. These are some photographs from that entrance where I was just taking that photograph looking across the site. So you can see in this top one here is Small Acres itself, the dwelling. This is one of the cypress trees that is to be retained on the site. And this bottom photograph here is a better photograph of that tree. These photographs here show the views to the southwest towards Woodham Drive. So in some of these photographs you can just make out the roof line of the closest neighbouring property beyond the outbuildings, which is located in Woodham Drive. These two photographs look towards Birkdale Rise, which is the new development to the northwest, beyond the tree belt. This is a very nice eucalyptus tree. I had commented when I was out on site, and that is to be retained. And I think in this photograph here, just about through the trees here, you can make out the closest building in the next door development. These photographs are across the site to the northeast and to the southeast. So the next slides just show in detail the layout. So we've got the access running up from Malden Road, and then we have a row of 6 bungalows along the south-western boundary of the site, and then the remainder of the properties are 2-storey. This just shows in a bit more detail in terms of the arrangements for the public right of way. So it does run along the access, and as you get to the where the access goes into the actual application site, the speed table is proposed, and then the public right of way ducks out of the vehicular access and then runs along the southeast corner of the site. At this point, I thought it would be useful to remind members of the access arrangements that were approved at the outline stage. So access was a matter that was already considered a number of years ago. I'm going to read, so bear with me, from the committee report from the outline application. So there's a couple of paragraphs that I think are pertinent just to refresh members' memory, particularly if they weren't on committee at that time. So paragraph 11.8.3 states vehicular and pedestrian access will be via the existing access from Malden Road onto Old School Court. The existing access provides suitable visibility to the east with substandard visibility currently to the west. To improve visibility, it is proposed to widen the footpath slightly to provide improved visibility for emerging drivers. The proposed access improvements are within the extents of the adopted public highway. The Highway Authority have reviewed the proposal and raised no objections. Paragraph 11.8.4. From Malden Road, the site would remain accessed via Old School Court. This is a private road in which the application site has a right to access over. And as noted above, the public right-of-way runs along the western side of Old School Court. The initial shared surface section along Old School Court is provided at 4.8 metres, but further north widens to 5.5 metres, and this is the main width throughout. These widths allow for a car to pass a larger vehicle on sections of the access. Given the good forward visibility, vehicles are able to give way to each other. Due to its characteristics, vehicles would be travelling at low speeds, and overall the provision of the shared surface is considered appropriate. It is noted that a buffer to each boundary, about 0.3 to 0.5 metres, has been provided to allow for some maintenance of the road or adjacent fences hedgerow, and also to allow clearance for wing mirrors. Again, the Highway Authority have no objections to the shared surface being used to serve the proposed development. I've done that bit. This slide here shows again the layout of the site. So you can see the paved areas and the parking spaces that are proposed for each property. Each property is served by a policy compliant level of parking spaces, whether it's surface or within garages. This plan here shows the proposed landscaping. These are the two trees that are mentioned within the committee report that are going to be retained. The committee report also sets out the number of new trees that are going to be planted within the site. This plan here shows the amenity spaces proposed within the site. So we've got the surfaced areas, which are roadways and turning areas. We've then got green amenity space, and then the management company areas where the proposed tree planting, and specifically so that we've got a tree-lined street within the site. The next couple of slides just show some proposed street scenes, which I think are useful for members to get an idea of the context of the development. So the top elevation is plots 10 to 15, and the one at the bottom is plots 1 to 6, which are the bungalows that back onto Woodham Drive. This second slide here shows plots 15 to 17 along the top, and then plots 7 to 10 on this second one here. The next few slides show a selection of floor plans and elevations for the bungalows and houses proposed across the site. So we have, this is one property type, which is a pair of bungalows, and then the associated floor plan and roof plan. We've also got a detached bungalow. So we've got the floor plans, the elevations there, and then the floor plans. We've got a pair of two-storey houses there with their floor plans as well. And then this is one of the detached dwelling types that is proposed. And then the associated floor plans. Another different type of detached property. The main differences on these ones is there's a variety of roof styles. And then the associated floor plans. And then we've got the details of the garages proposed here, both single garages and double garages. So, by summary and conclusion, the principle of development has been established throughout the granting of outline planning permission. Officers consider that this is a well-designed, high-quality scheme. Officers have critiqued and negotiated further improvements throughout the process and consider that the appearance, landscaping, layout and scale are acceptable. Therefore, it's recommended that the reserved matters are approved subject to the conditions set out in Appendix 1 and the approved plans and documents list also set out in Appendix 1. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mel. Councillor Holland.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. The only thing that really concerns me in this is the things like who's going to, two questions, who is actually responsible for maintaining the access? Does normal operation or use of the access involve passing spaces which are actually other people's driveways or spaces? And I haven't read the detail carefully enough. Can you tell me what the paving is of the road surfaces within the development? Thank you.
I can come back on the first two questions. I may need some time just to double check on the paving. In terms of the maintenance of the private road, that wouldn't be something that we would be aware of in terms of because of it being a private road. My assumption with dealings with private roads in the past is that it would be anyone who has a right to pass and repass over that section of road would have a responsibility for maintenance. But it wouldn't be either us as a local authority or the Essex County Council because of it being a private road. In terms of the passing places, not, as far as I'm aware, none of the passing places involve other people's driveways. It would just be within the main run of the access. I will come back to you on the paving question, but if other members have any other questions, I'll try and listen to both. Oh, my able assistant is going to help.
Mel, can I ask another question then briefly, which is why is it we do not, I understand it's not an authority responsibility, the access road, why isn't some degree of maintenance level built into the requirements for the, I understood there was a management company going to be responsible for the green spaces and what have you within the development? Why is it that this, for my information, that the development will logically produce a higher level of wear on that access drive? Why is it not somehow a demand of the management company for the new development that they have to support the maintenance of that access path? Thank you.
Can you bear with us? I just need to confer with Neil. 2 seconds. Sorry.
So the application. So from the planning authority's point of view, we're satisfied that the appropriate notices were served for the original application in terms of the access arrangements. So in terms of the application site where there's new development, the 106 would require details of the amenity areas and the management company to be set out. What we would usually do with the 106 is look for the details of management of the remainder of the site. So that would be specified. So it's not clear at this stage, because I don't think we've been provided with the details, where the management arrangements would go. So it could be that the management arrangements would include responsibility from the management company, but we don't know that. So with the 106, the way that that's usually structured is the details of the setting out of the amenity areas and the future management of them would be provided. So the 106 officer would be clear on how all of the site will be managed. So sometimes that would be through adoption by the statutory authority, sometimes that would be another body, which could be the case with the road, or it could be the management company or a combination of, but we'd have that detail through the amenity areas. So hopefully that answers that question. We, I suppose the overriding point is we need to be satisfied of what the arrangements are. We can't necessarily impose something on existing arrangements. So if the developer has right of access over that road but has no legal responsibility to maintain it, and that responsibility rests with whoever owns the road, then we can't overrule that. It would come back to what the legal position is at the moment. Just in terms of the other question around the materials, which I was just looking for. So there's a short section of tarmac surface showing coming into the development, and then as you get to just outside plot 1, so the first plot as you come in, the rest of the site is shown as being completed in permeable paving, a paved sort of space, and that includes the driveways, and then there's a different access path in a sort of sandstone, according to the annotation, which is just the paths leading to the front doors of the properties, but all of the other hard standing for the roads, passing places, parking spaces within the development itself is shown to be permeable block paving.
Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just briefly, I noticed that the expectation, I think locally, was this was going to be either entirely or mostly bungalows, and the parish council, that was what they were expecting. I know we can't refuse it on that basis, but it's just to note that it's different from what was locally expected from the outline. Secondly, and again, we can't use this as a reason to refuse it, but I think that access arrangement is going to lead to an awful lot of frustration. Of course, it's not just cars which will access a development like that, it's delivery vans, people having work done, and the day-to-day comings and goings. I mean, we've got a lane similar to that in Rivenall which accesses a play area, and constantly cars are backing up and shunting around to try and avoid each other. So, and particularly because it's quite a long access drive, I think there's going to be an awful lot of that going on. My question relates to paragraph 11.2.3. It's something I've raised before. It's impossible from that to tell what the and the following paragraph 11.2.3 and 11.2.4 to tell what the net change of trees is, because it talks about groups, and we don't know how many are in each group. I mean, I've asked this before. I wonder if we could have a table when this happens, which actually sets out the numbers. Not necessarily even the species, but just the numbers. I mean, the officer said there's 2 going to be retained, but here it says 20 will be retained, but then it goes on about a whole load of things, various groups, which you know, is that a group of 2? Is it a group of 20? You just don't know. I mean, can the officer say any more about that? And in future, can we have a table showing exactly what the changes are? Thank you.
So with, I made specific reference to the 2 large cypress trees as you first come into the site, because they are the most substantial trees that are being kept and will be features as you first enter the site. That wasn't dismissing the other trees and groups that were going to be retained, but I made a special mention of those just because they will be the most prominent, particularly when you're entering the site, and your first view into the site is those 2 trees.
No other members have a question. Can I ask a question myself, Mel? It's just again also about the new trees to be planted. Is there any indication of what type of tree? I mean, I noticed from the drawings that the trees are shown to be sort of quite large trees. There's obviously only indicative drawings, but sort of right in front of the first floor windows. And I know that they can cause problems with people saying that their bedrooms are really dark because they not getting any sunlight. And I know we've discussed this before. Do we have any information on the type of tree? I think it's quite important exactly what type of tree is proposed.
Yes, one of the, I was just putting it up there, one of the, there are a number of plans that are looking to be approved which deal with the trees, both in terms of tree protection and also the species that are proposed. So within the one of the tree documents, it will list what all of the tree species are. I haven't provided that full detail within the presentation. I can see if I can get those plans up and see if we can provide you with a list of what the trees will be.
I think my concern is this issue about obscuring light into the bedrooms and then causing problems later on. I mean, I think the right tree is actually a very important thing. Could I also just mention, also while we're looking at this, the condition on trees doesn't actually mention watering. Sometimes I think we do include a requirement that the trees are watered during the first 5 years of their life.
In terms of the watering element, when I looked back through the details that had been submitted, it did include a watering detail, which is why that specific wording wasn't required. We have had cases in the past where watering hasn't been included within the maintenance or management regime, but in this case it has, so it wasn't needed at this time.
Yeah, just having a look at the landscaping plan. So there's a detailed planting plan, which is actually across three pages. So on the third page, there's a specification around planting, so specifies around preparation of the ground. But as Mel said, there is a section on watering, which explains the times of the year when watering would be required, unless there's been heavy rain and the amounts of water to be applied. So we'd be relying on that as one of the approved plans. Just in terms of the tree types, they are all specified on the second page of that drawing, which is why they might have been missed when they've been looked at. I'm not going to propose that I try and explain all of those to you and their suitability. My observation on looking at it is there do seem to be it does seem to be a reasonable offset between where trees are proposed and the fronts of properties. So I would say, in my experience, without looking at what each of the trees are, I would hope that the right type of tree has been specified given the offset to the property. I've certainly seen tighter layouts than this, where trees are, when they're initially planted, they look like they're almost touching the property, which I think is the concern. So I think, given that we've looked at the tree types that are proposed here, I think as officers we're comfortable that the right trees are specified in the right location, and given the offset to the properties, that the tree should have space to be able to mature without coming into conflict with the residents and coming under pressure to be cut back or removed. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Neil. Anybody else like to make any comment on this application? In which case, would anybody like to move officer's recommendation?
Not happy to.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. Does that find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Diamond. All those in favour of granting this application? All those against? Abstentions? One abstention. That application has been granted. Thank you very much, members. That then brings us to the end of this evening's Planning Committee meeting, and I look forward to seeing you next time.